The IPC, the Interastral Peace Corporation following the path of preservation. The faction that pretty much serves as the government of Honkai Star Rail, since everyone pays them taxes and they run the prison system. In the last video, I tried my hardest to remain unbiased, but today, I'm going to do the opposite, because I hate this faction with a passion that deserves to ascend into its own path. I don't plan on beating the Nova hates the IPC allegations today. For clarification, I don't hate every individual associated with the IPC. Carmela did nothing wrong, other than be a reference to Skibbity Toilet, which is a crime in itself. But that's besides the point. This is a bit of a new video style for me, but I need to get this out of my system, because I don't think you know just how bad the IPC is. You see, I made a poll a few days ago asking a simple question. Is the IPC an evil corporation? And approximately 1.2 thousand of you are wrong. And I will prove it to you today, because we are going over every major evil thing the IPC has done. This will have to be a multi-part series because I ran out of time while writing this script, and I think that is a good enough preview. So without further ado, the many crimes of the IPC Explained. Oh boy, where do we start? Okay, so why not start at the beginning, right? The whole reason why Yarilo 6 now belongs to the IPC is because 600 years ago, the IPC investors gave the architects of Belobog technology and building plans for their cities. Then they left when they heard the Antimatter Legion was going to attack them. Yes, instead of trying to protect them from the literal terrorists, they decided to use the Trump strategy of building a wall and proceeded to refuse to help them at all, leaving them all to their deaths. Later, we found that Igor fought in many tournaments, and after every win, he explained the plight of Yarilo 6, and the IPC turned a blind eye and a deaf ear at every single turn, describing the resources produced by his planet as infinitesimal. So even though they were a work-in-progress investment project, their current market value wasn't high enough, so they get left for dead. But they didn't die. So what did the IPC do in response to this? After realizing they didn't die, after realizing there was a single civilization left alive on that planet, you know what they said? They said, oh yeah, they still owe us for that investment we made 700 years ago. So we legally own this planet now. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what just happened here is called malicious debt trap diplomacy on a planetary scale. They invested in Yarilo 6 just to create a debt they couldn't pay back, then let the interest stack and return later, knowing full well they had no possible way of paying it off, and even if they could, they had no possible way of doing so for 700 years. Evil. They are evil. But it gets worse. Oh, it gets so much worse. You guys remember Aventurine? I talked about him last video, you should go watch it, but did you know that his entire clan was killed because of the IPC? That's not even the worst part. Let me explain. The Katakins and the Avgens, along with a lot of other clans of Sigonia 4, had a lot of issues with each other and fought a bunch of wars with each other. So the IPC shows up with a grand scheme called Sigonian Sovereignty and unified all the clans. Great, right? Except for the fact that it was all the clans that left out the Katakins and the Avgens and exiled them to the deserts of Sigonia. Why? Because the other clans were racist towards them. And that's not even an exaggeration. That's the actual reason. And you know what the IPC did? They supported the racism and let it happen. Now it's implied that the Katakins were way stronger than their Avgen enemies, so they planned to commit genocide on the entire clan, and the Avgens were helpless to stop them. So not only were the Avgens exiled to the desert because of racism, but they also had to scrounge for food and water in inhumane conditions while being hunted by their mortal enemies. A situation directly caused by the IPC. But that's not even where it ends, because the Avgens heard about the Katakins' extermination plot and they begged the IPC for help. And you would think that they would respond like they did with Igor. But they decided to be even worse. they agreed to save the Avgens in their time of need and proceeded to never show up, which led to the deaths of 6,728 Avgens with 3,452 missing. This is entirely the IPC's fault. But would you believe me if I told you that it gets worse? Because the IPC caused the suffering and extermination of his people. Aventurine was trafficked into slavery, and after being forced into a Hunger Games-like scenario by his master, Aventurine killed 34 other slaves to save himself, and afterwards found a way to kill his master and he freed himself. But you know what the IPC did? Instead of apologizing to him for letting his entire clan die, allowing him to fall into the clutches of human traffickers, they arrested him for murder charges. Let that sink in. A slave freed himself by killing a murderer and a criminal in self-defense, and that somehow counts as murder. And I know I keep saying this, but it gets worse when you listen to the IPC's own broadcast.
The hammer of preservation will fall on all beings, regardless of life or death, regardless of race, regardless of ideology, to uphold the basic rights we inherently possess.
Apparently, being enslaved and having a brand mark burned into the neck doesn't count as a violation of someone's basic rights. Also, remember that whole Sigonia sovereignty deal? Yeah, the IPC supported prejudice, so they managed to break their whole mission statement twice here. Then after being arrested, Jade says this to Aventurine.
As a servant, you should not resist your master. Yet, you went and killed that man anyway. No lawyer has the audacity to defend you.
They actually unironically support slavery. That is not a joke. But let's move on because I got more. Remember the Shinjo's crisis with the Borison and how Hule escaped and killed many people and almost Jiaoqiu too? Yeah, that's almost entirely the IPC's fault. Let me explain. Because, you see, the IPC loves to invest in horrible things that shouldn't exist, and this time, they decided to invest in the Intelligentsia Guild's project to create Cyborg Borison, that I like to refer to as CSR Borison, standing for Cyborg Space Racist Borison, because they hate Foxians for literally no reason. And you know how much the IPC loves that. So they gave them all the resources and funding to make this horrible abomination a reality, and even painted this walking war crime in their signature colors. They're not even hiding it at this point. They do it for the love of the game. And of course, during transport, they make an emergency landing on the Shinjo of all places, the homeland of the Foxians, where they are taken by the actual Borison to the shackling prison to take the lives of hundreds of Cloud Knights. They even know they're wrong too, because Scott tried so hard to evade inspection. I have no clue why the Shinjo doesn't press charges against the IPC. It's their project that is in their colors, and their transport ship brought it here. But they get off because Jing Yuan is too nice, and he believes it was a mistake. So Scott gets off scot-free. This is not even all of the horrible things that we know the IPC has done. Not even close. I haven't even started on the things that the individual members have done, which is yet another thing I hate about this faction. They commit atrocities and hide behind the individuals and use them as scapegoats, like how they send Topaz to Eurilo 6, but we can't get mad at her because, oh, she's just doing her job. Or how they throw a character like Carmela at us to remind us that, oh, all the IPC members aren't bad. But in the end, that's just an excuse. That just means that the corporation actively uses their own employees as a buffer to do horrible things. That's like aggressively starting a war, then blaming that nation you attacked for attacking the soldiers you sent at them because the soldiers are good people just doing their jobs.
One of our P-45 executives was attacked and nearly killed in the dreamscape. The IPC can't simply ignore this incident.
No, that's not how it works. They lie, cheat, scheme, manipulate, and are actively attempting to take over the universe. They are objectively evil. But what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.